The Department of Public Health and Human Services is pleased to bring you Aging Horizons. Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, fraud, legal issues, veterans benefits, and caregiving. Aging Horizons is a program dedicated to inform and prepare Montanans on these timely issues, making a difference to you and your loved ones. Here now is today's program host.
Welcome to Aging Horizons. Today we're at the Governor's Conference on Aging in Great Falls, and we got a chance to talk to Leanna Waller, who's the Section Supervisor for Adult Protective Services. We're going to ask her all about elder exploitation in Montana, what the trends look like, and what we can see in our communities across the state. So make sure you stay tuned to Aging Horizons.
Respite. It's okay to need it. It's okay to want it. Will you provide it?
The hard part about having outside help is that there's not a lot of people out there who can do that kind of work. We've been very fortunate that our Bonnie has been with us for 7 years. I don't know what I'd do without her. I need her in our lives. She's our second mother. And I can't help but think of her that way.
To find out how to change lives, including your own, call 800-224-6034 or visit respite.mt.gov.
Did you just text me?
I didn't want to disturb you if you were sleeping.
Sleeping? I'm sitting right next to you, silly.
There you are. Hey, I found a couple of Medicare helping programs online that I think we ought to look into.
It says if we qualify, we can get help paying for our prescription drugs. Oh, and there's a program that can help pay our Part B premium.
To learn more about extra help and Medicare savings programs, call your local SHIP counselor today.
Maybe I better text him.
I have so many questions about power of attorney.
Well, some powers of attorney are for finances and others are for healthcare decisions.
A power of attorney designates an agent who would make decisions on your behalf.
While making a power of attorney, you have the ability to control your agent's power.
You also have the ability to decide when that POA would take effect.
Wait, am I giving away all my rights?
Power of attorney isn't a license to make any decision for you, just those that you've specified.
Your agent should be somebody that's working in your best interest, but it should also be somebody that you would trust.
What if they try to abuse their power?
Protective measures like third-party accounting, secondary signatures, defined spending and gifting limits can help protect against financial exploitation. An agent's powers can always be limited by a customized power of attorney, and they can be revoked by you or the court if the power of attorney is abused.
So carefully drafted estate planning documents can help ensure that your finances are monitored, but not abused.
If you or someone you know is being exploited, please report to Aging Services Bureau at 844-277-9300 or the Legal Service Developer at 1-800-332-2272. This message sponsored by the DPHHS Aging Service Bureau.
Welcome to Aging Horizons, brought to you by the Department of Public Health and Human Services. I'm your host, Katie Lovell, and today we're in Great Falls at the Governor's Conference on Aging, and we're talking to Leanna Waller, who is the Section Supervisor for Adult Protective Services. Leanna, thank you for being with me today. So I have a question for you. What is Adult Protective Services?
So Adult Protective Services is state administered. We're housed under the giant umbrella, which is the Department of Public Health and Human Services, and we're specifically located under the Senior and Long-Term Care Division. We are tasked with investigating allegations of abuse, neglect, or exploitation against those who are 18 to 59 with a disability and those aged 60 and older who may or may not have a disability.
And you guys are terrifying police officers who are going to come in and pull people out of their houses, right?
Well, some people might feel that way, but we most certainly aren't. Most of our staff, although we do have some staff who have a background in law enforcement, but most of our staff actually have more experience in social work. So our approach is very different. We're a voluntary civil agency, so we don't prosecute for crimes. We do more of what's considered a preliminary investigation into allegations of abuse, neglect, or exploitation, that if there is a crime that's committed, we can refer that to law enforcement. But what you would typically find if we come to your house is we're going to be dressed in plain professional clothing. We're going to ask some tough questions, but I think we approach all of our situations with compassion and understanding, and our goal is to help resolve those concerns for abuse, neglect, or exploitation.
So let's talk a little bit about abuse, neglect, and exploitation. What does abuse mean in the context of Adult Protective Services?
So abuse can be really anything in the terms of like a physical abuse. This could be like hitting someone, kicking someone, pinching someone, things that you would think of that would cause physical injury to another person. It can also be sexual in nature, so things that you might see in terms of sexual contact that is unwanted. That could be like sexual assault, rape, misconduct. We also see neglect. So this could be caregiver neglect. The important thing to know about neglect is that it requires a contractual obligation. So we can also see self-neglect. So a person who's unable to meet their own protection or safety needs. And then exploitation is really just probably what a lot of people think of it to be. It's a misuse or misappropriation of somebody's property or assets.
And how often are you getting these types of reports? Is this a widespread problem in Montana?
Yes, absolutely. And in Montana, we're a little unique in the sense that our population is aging very, very quickly. So in the 2014 census, we were ranked, I think, 14th in the nation for a population that's having the most population over the age of 60. Sure. In the 2020 census, we were ranked 4th or 5th in the nation. So we are aging, and we're aging at an incredible rate. So these issues of adult maltreatment are increasing rapidly within our state as our population ages.
And then does Adult Protective Services work in only one county, or do you work statewide?
So we're statewide. We cover all 56 counties in Montana. We have right now 32 staff who investigate allegations of abuse, neglect, or exploitation across the state. So we have several staff who are actually covering multiple counties. We do not have jurisdiction on tribal lands. Sure. So if we receive a report involving a tribal member or a tribal member residing on tribal lands, we refer that to the tribal agency.
And what types of agencies can make reports to Adult Protective Services?
Anyone can. You don't have to be with an agency. If you have a concern for a loved one or a neighbor or someone within your community that you think will meet our criteria and you have concerns that they've been abused, neglected, or exploited, you can make that report. But most often we receive reports from social services agencies, home health care, AAAs, your area on aging agencies, and hospitals, medical providers, counselors, anyone who you might consider as a mandatory reporter is a huge part of who reports to our agency.
And when a report is made, what's the first step? What happens?
So initially when a report comes in, our practice is that report is first processed through intake, and then it's assigned out to the region and specific county to an investigator to follow up on. That investigator is then going to first make contact with that reporter if that information is available. This is a great opportunity for that reporter to provide additional information involving the situation they've reported. This is a one-way street, so this isn't an opportunity for our staff to share any information with that reporter. Due to confidentiality, we're not able to do that, but it is a great opportunity for that reporter to provide more information. And then that really initiates the investigation. The investigator is then going to be following up with the victim, anyone who has information regarding the situation, the alleged perpetrator, and then they'll be making findings based on the information they gathered. And we typically gather evidence, so this can be things like bank statements, legal documents, photographs, video footage, anything that will help support or refute those claims of abuse, neglect, or exploitation. And then we make findings and we notify the individuals involved. And we usually close our case. There is a secondary role that we hold, and that's to make referrals for services. Sure. So if there is services that could help alleviate or reduce risk, our investigators are going to try to connect that individual to those services in their local community.
Leanna, when we get back, I want to talk a little bit about what are the signs and symptoms that we should be looking out for. So when we talk about making an exploitation referral, it is so important to know, what you're looking for. So when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about what you might be seeing in your friends, your neighbors, your loved ones that might give you concern enough to make a referral to Adult Protective Services. So stay tuned.
I think the most pleasant surprise when we turned 65 and signed up for Medicare Part B was finding out about our Welcome to Medicare preventive visit.
It was free, and it gave us the opportunity to visit with our doctors and establish a plan for our health going forward.
They reviewed our medical history, measured our height, weight, blood pressure, and counseled us on other risk factors.
To learn more about Medicare's free or low-cost preventive and wellness benefits, call your local SHIP counselor at 800-551-3191. I mentioned it's free, right?
Twice.
I was the last guy you'd expect to get diabetes. I was a competitive runner and I always took care of myself. So when I was diagnosed, it kind of threw me. But it's really encouraging to know I'm not alone with it. There are a lot of other people going through the same things as I am. It takes some effort. You have to keep after it. Exercise, meds, and diet are the key. But there are a lot of folks who want me to succeed. Diabetes is not the end of the world. With effort and attitude, you can have a normal life.
Today, class, we'll be discussing the term ombudsman, a word we borrowed from the Swedes and never gave back. Say you're a resident or you have a loved one in long-term care. Now, what do you do if you're not happy with the care and services you receive? You call your long-term care ombudsman, of course. Your ombudsman is available to support you and your rights. An advocate on your behalf could be the ticket. This is your home. If you have questions, the numbers right there below me have all the answers. Class dismissed.
A decade of Montana 4th graders on Energy Share. If you're having trouble keeping your home warm this winter, Energy Share of Montana is here to help. We've helped thousands of Montanans who are having trouble paying their energy bills, and getting assistance from the friendly folks at Energy Share is only a phone call or Google search away. Energy Share is not a government program. It's neighbors helping neighbors who face energy emergencies. The Montana way. Call or visit our website today. Thanks to Energy Share, I'm cozy like a bear.
Welcome back to Aging Horizons. Today we're in Great Falls at the Governor's Conference on Aging, and we are speaking with Leanna Waller, who is the Section Supervisor for Adult Protective Services. We've talked a little bit about how to report to Adult Protective Services. Now we're going to talk about why. So Leanna, when we talk about making a referral for Adult Protective Services, I think a lot of people assume that you have to have proof that something happened, that something really terrible has to be going on. When should people make a referral to Adult Protective Services?
Yeah, wonderful question. And yes, you're right. A lot of people do consider when they are going to make a report whether or not they have all the facts and they know exactly what has occurred. And that is not the role of the reporter. That's the role of the APS investigator, is to find those facts and make determinations. So for anyone out there who's listening and is maybe unsure if what they're concerned about is or is not abuse, neglect, or exploitation, I would say go ahead and make that report. If you're toggling in your mind on, is this abuse, neglect, is this not, it's probably a good indicator that you suspect there is some abuse occurring, or you have a suspicion that there's adult maltreatment occurring. So anyone who has a concern can either go online to aps.mt.gov, or they can call into our intake line and make a report by phone with our intake staff.
When folks are thinking about what situations, what symptoms, signs to be looking for, what are some of the things that we can look out for?
Yeah, there's a lot of things. I think really what's most important is that people are paying attention to their loved ones, especially their loved ones who may have a disability or who are aging. We know that isolation is the #1 risk factor for people to experience abuse, neglect, or exploitation. So staying in contact with people can help you better identify some of the signs and symptoms. And things to look for, I would say, is, are you seeing any changes in behavior with that person that you're looking out for, that you're concerned about? Maybe withdrawal from certain people, maybe withdrawal from doing certain activities, maybe an avoidance of certain caregivers or other loved ones or trusted individuals that might be in their life. Sure. And then in terms of, possible financial exploitation, things that I would want to be mindful of is, are they able to fund the things that they need? So are they able to pay for rent or pay their mortgage? Are they able to buy food? Are their needs being met? And is there a financial piece of that requires their needs to be met? So things to just kind of look out for, like, are they able to fund these things? And is there a change in the pattern there? So maybe they've been able to do this for a long time, and then all of a sudden they're risking eviction, or they're no longer able to buy the necessities that they need to maintain their daily life. And so I'd wonder why that is, what's happening in their life that's preventing them from keeping that pattern.
And when we think about physical or sexual abuse happening, what are some of the symptoms that we might notice in someone that is going on?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. So this may seem obvious for some, but you're definitely going to be looking for any sort of physical indication that there might be abuse occurring. So things like bruising, injuries that are unexplained or inadequately explained. If there's sexual abuse, there's certain physical marks that might indicate there's been sexual abuse happening, and this could be bruising in the genital areas, on the buttocks, bleeding as well. So things like that you're going to be wanting to pay attention to. There can also be sexually transmitted infections that you also want to pay attention to if somebody has recently contracted something. That could be a sign that there has been some sort of sexual assault.
Sure. I know that there are a lot of ways that someone might change after something like this has happened to them. What things should we be looking out for as far as personality changes that someone who's experiencing abuse, neglect, or exploitation might be going through?
Yeah, we do see a lot of emotional changes, especially when someone has experienced something traumatic such as adult maltreatment, and you might see some increased anxiety, you might see some depression or symptoms of depression. So I think keeping an eye out, as we talk about those changes in behavior, that can also be changes in someone's mood or emotions, and looking out for, increased fear or anxiety, or also symptoms of low mood such as depression or withdrawal are really important.
So really, so many of these things are based on changes, getting to know your loved ones, your neighbors, your friends, and then monitoring for major changes. Absolutely, that is so important, as we move forward as a society, just really keeping a lookout for people. Are there trends that we're seeing as far as exploitation rates or abuse rates? Are they going up? Are they going down? What are we seeing across the state?
In Montana, we're seeing an increase. So the pandemic did something really strange in Montana. I think this happened pretty much nationwide, but when we had the shutdown and there was, restrictive measures in place to help protect people, it also prevented people from being able to see their loved ones, see the individuals in their life who might be dependent on care in order to meet their daily needs. And so I think we saw the reports drop drastically because people didn't have eyes on people. Once those measures loosened, we saw an increase in reports. We actually hit a peak, and I think from 2020 to 21, we saw about 150% increase in reports to our agency. We're starting to see that come down a little bit. I think it's settling, but what we're noticing too is that the number of allegations per report is increasing. So that could mean that we're seeing more serious incidents of abuse, neglect, or exploitation as a result.
Absolutely. When we get back, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the trends that you're seeing across the state and then some of those stressor situations. So make sure you stay tuned because we're going to really talk about some of the things that you can look out for as problematic stressors in your community, and then some of the trends as far as the different scams and schemes that we're seeing going across Montana. So make sure you stay tuned.
Every 65 seconds, someone is affected with Alzheimer's or other dementias. Many become isolated at a time when help is most needed. If you or someone you love is affected, help is available, both for people with memory loss and their caregivers. Memory loss can feel frightening, but you are not alone. Call the free 24/7 Alzheimer's Association helpline, 800-272-3900, for guidance and support.
This is Bill. He just received his new Medicare card and is following some simple rules to protect himself from fraud. He knows to never give out his Medicare, Social Security, or bank number over the phone. And this is Nancy. She knows that to detect any problems, she always reads her Medicare summary notice or Medicare Advantage EOB to make sure the billing is correct. Both Bill and Nancy know that anything suspicious can be reported to Montana SMP at 1-800-551-3191.
45 years, 2 packs a day. It's like $80,000. I thought I was just hurting myself until I fell asleep in a chair with a cigarette. The whole house went up, and I lost it all. I knew smoking was expensive, but I never thought it would cost me everything.
I've been shooting since I was young. It's something I've always enjoyed. I wasn't feeling like myself, but my friend noticed. He asked if he could hold onto my guns temporarily. At first, I was a little shocked, but then I agreed. I think he saved my life that day.
Welcome back to Aging Horizons. Today we're in Great Falls at the Governor's Conference on Aging, and we're speaking with Leanna Waller, who's the Section Supervisor for Adult Protective Services. We've already talked a little bit about who should be reporting, about how you make a report, and some of the things that you might be looking out for when you start to make that report. But now we're going to talk a little bit about the stressors. What could be causing this exploitation in the community and when you should be paying a little more attention. So Leanna, we talked a little bit about the typical abuser when Paul Greenwood spoke. So can you tell us a little bit about who we think of as maybe a typical abuser in a home?
Sure. So I think oftentimes people assume that the abuser is going to be someone maybe unknown, but what we do know is that it's often going to be a loved one or someone who's trusted by that victim. And this can often be family members, so people who are residing within even the same unit or the same housing situation as the victim. And we do see a lot of that. We see a lot of abuse occurring in these family units.
When we're thinking about a family unit, are there any situations in which we might see a stressor, something that we can look out for to pay more attention to the threats in our lives?
Absolutely. I mean, and these aren't guaranteed going to create a dynamic like this, but I think that there are some things that we would consider stressors. So certainly employment, making sure everyone has, the financial means to meet their own care needs, eligibility determination for those individuals if employment's not an option. So just making sure everybody has access to benefits and resources that can help meet their needs. Certainly with addiction issues, we see an increase. So if there's substance abuse issues within the home, that can create some tensions or stressors. Also, mental health is really huge. So if people aren't able to access mental health resources within their community, that can increase the risk within that family unit. Also, if we have, individuals who are maybe returning home for a variety of reasons, maybe they're newly diagnosed with a disability, or maybe they're returning home from incarceration or a loss of a job from one community and having to come back home to be able to survive. A lot of these things can create stressful situations for a family.
Absolutely. So we talked about, the changes in the individual that you got to watch out for, but it's also changes in those around them that we should be watching out for as well. Leanna, one of the things that we noticed lately is some stories, horrible stories that have happened in the news, and then about seniors who friends and family members couldn't contact anymore. When should that be a red flag for folks?
So if family members aren't able to connect with their other family, so kind of like isolation. And we saw this through the pandemic. Families were sort of distanced from one another due to being able to protect people. But I think if you're seeing families are sort of estranged or no longer in contact with one another, isolated from certain family members, and that could also be created by individuals within the home. Maybe they're restricting contact, not allowing mom to reach out to her other children. That could be a sign or a symptom that there might be something going on there.
Absolutely. Leanna, are there trends that are across the state? Do we see more financial exploitation? Are we seeing more abuse? Are there areas of the state where we're seeing more reports? What can you tell us about the trends?
Yeah, we do see about 30% of our cases are self-neglect cases, which is really interesting, because I think where we probably lack the most resources is addressing those issues of self-neglect. We see about 30% neglect abuse cases, and then about the remaining are exploitation. We are seeing an increase in internet scams or sweetheart scams. We're also seeing, just an increase in caregiver neglect or neglect situations, and I think a lot of that might be related to just the shorting and the staffing shortages that we're seeing across the nation in home health care and facility setting care.
Absolutely. What can you tell me what a romance scam is?
Yeah, so a romance scam can look like a lot of things, but it usually involves someone who is trying to build a relationship with another person with the intent to try to exploit them in some way. So these can be romantic in nature. They can also just look like, they're reaching out for companionship. And we see cases where individuals fall victim to this, and once they realize that it is a scam, they may even continue that behavior just because they're missing that interaction with someone. Again, just going back to that, like, isolation is extremely important, and it's a huge risk for individuals. So if someone's feeling isolated or lonely, they may be at more risk to engage in these internet scams or these sweetheart scams looking for companionship. And it can be, through social media, through emailing, through text messaging or other texting apps that might be available.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then, Leanna, as a final thing, what are some of the things that we can do to help those seniors in our community from falling victim to abuse, neglect, or exploitation in the first place?
I think the biggest thing is just paying attention, noticing maybe your aging neighbors or individuals within your family who are maybe getting older, or certainly anyone who is an adult with a disability, making sure that you're kind of watching out for them. I think we have to address this from approach that we all have a role and we all can play a part in preventing this and interrupting it. And that not one agency is going to, solve this issue of adult maltreatment. So it's really important that people keep a watchful eye, but then people also know where to report concerns if they have them. And the best place you can report those is to Adult Protective Services. If there's a concern for immediate, medical attention, please call 911. But if you're wanting to report a concern of abuse, neglect, or exploitation, Adult Protective Services is a great place to make
Absolutely.
that report.
Leanna, thank you so much for all this important information. And I think one of the things we learned today that is so important and so wonderful is that being a good community member is one of the most important things that you can do to prevent abuse and neglect and maltreatment in your communities. And that's something that we can all work on as being a better community member. So thank you for staying tuned to Aging Horizons.
Special thanks to the Department of Public Health and Human Services for their continued support. Hosts on Aging Horizons are program specialists at the Montana Office on Aging. Production facilities provided by Video Express Productions. For more information about Aging Horizons, call the Department of Public Health and Human Services toll-free at 800-332-2272.